Well, before you start it, what are we doing here? What is your goal?
Let's start with that. Let's just start with that. Hi, my name is Reza Ganjavi, and I'm with a gentleman called Halayudha Das that I met a couple of days ago. And we were having an informal discussion over breakfast, and I thought, well, let's capture it on video for fun. And so we decided to get together and have a dialogue. We don't know what about yet, do we? Well, Halayudha Das is involved in the Hare Krishna movement, yes. And he's from what I hear, one of the pundits.
Pundits? Who told you
I heard
that?
Somebody said you know the Bhagavad Gita inside out.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. That book is it's pretty elevated, and a lot of it is ununderstandable to the common man who just approaches it like another book. There's a process by which one can come to understand it, and that takes a while.
So do you remember where we left off yesterday?
Yeah, I was giving you an example that I thought was helpful, because you had said to me that you didn't know about this reincarnation thing, about life after death. I'm trying to remember exactly what you said. So I was trying to give you an example that I thought was helpful in understanding why reincarnation, why the science of reincarnation is actually valid. But now that I think about it, I realize that it's probably better to explain where we're coming from, for you to explain where you're coming from, and for me to explain where I'm coming from. So someone who accidentally tunes in to watching you on YouTube or wherever you post this will get a sense of what Hare Krishna means, where it's coming from, and what Krishnamurti represents. Because I think that's your background, that's your school of thought.
Not really. Because I've studied, I have a degree in philosophy.
Okay.
And I've studied many great thinkers, both Western and Eastern. I'm not a follower of Krishnamurti or believer in what he says. In fact, I don't believe anything he says.
Okay.
He's just a pointer, like many others who point out certain facts of certain things. Then you can pursue those and see if it's actually true or not. But if you find something as first-hand, then you found it, and it's not anymore second-hand because somebody says it is so, and you just believe it.
Right.
So I'm definitely not coming from a Krishnamurti school or background of that.
Well, forgive me, because I got that impression because you seem to have promoted it.
No, I didn't promote it. I was wondering, you said you come to Ojai often, and I was wondering if you were familiar with Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
Because he talked here for 65 years, that's about all.
Right, no, but familiarity is one thing, just knowing that he's there and he's a big name here in Ojai is one thing, but having delved into his philosophy, I can't say that I have.
Right.
Although I'm familiar based with some of his teachings based on where he fits in the whole Vedic scheme. And that's what's important, I think, to understand.
So where he fits in the Vedic scheme?
Well, it's important to understand this, that there are what are called the sad darshans. Sad in Sanskrit means 6, and darshans means views.
Okay.
So there are, in the whole Vedic scriptures, you might say, there are 6 views of creation, God, the material world. And they're very important to understand, but they're not really relevant to our discussion because it'll take us down a path of Ramunacharya. This is real, he said. The monism is real because Brahman is real. But there's also the Jiva. There's also the living entity. There's also Shakti, the energy of Brahman, which is diffused in matter.
I think this is what we were talking about yesterday. Now I remember the last thing you said was about the Jiva and the Mahat, atman. And I was questioning that also.
Right, so this is not a concoction of the Hare Krishnas. Ramanujacharya introduced this concept. He reintroduced it into the Vedic system, which had been forgotten. Jiva means the living entity, who is part of what is called the marginal Shakti, the marginal potency, the Tatastha Shakti of the Lord. And then you have Kala. Kala means time, right? So these are 4 elements of the absolute truth which are eternal. The Purusha is eternal. The Jiva, Prakriti, both are eternal. The Jiva is eternal and Kala is eternal.
I don't know about that.
Oh wait. We have no way of knowing or not knowing.
This is the theory, right?
We have no way of knowing or not knowing. How do we not know? We have to have. How much knowledge do we have to possess to say categorically something does not exist?
Wait,
right?
But so we can talk about this.
Right. So we are accepting information, and we are given simultaneously a process whereby we can know that this information is true or false.
Can I respond?
Yes, sure.
So you say we have no way of knowing or not knowing, but you say that, for example, the Jiva is eternal. But that's a statement of knowledge, right?
That
is that just a theory?
No, that is a statement of knowledge because we adopt the method for knowing. Of ourselves, if we just approach the information, we don't know if it's true or not. Someone comes to us and says, for example, a controversial thing like Bin Laden knocked down the Twin Towers. We don't know if it's true. But look at how many people accept that.
I don't want to go into that.
No, I'm not going into it, but I'm saying just as an example, it could be anything. It could be man walked on the moon. Well, we don't know because we weren't there, we didn't see. How do we know?
No, but with regards to Jiva, I think this is... Jiva in common terms is the individual.
Jiva is the individual living entity.
Individual living entity.
Right.
So the question is this individual living entity eternal or not?
Okay.
If you propose that... Let me finish. If you propose that it's eternal, then I say let's look at that.
Wait, but before we get to that, you asked me about the 5 aspects of the absolute truth, right? And I told you that according to this system of philosophy, now we're not inventing anything. Our process is called Shrauta Panta, because we hear. This is how we're instructed to see in the age of Kali, is through hearing, right? We hear things and we see. Sometimes we want to see, like visually what's going on, but we can just close our eyes and we can hear and we understand.
Are we in age of Kali still?
Kali has just begun. The age of Kali has just begun.
I think the whole history of mankind has been age of Kali.
But the history of mankind goes back how many years?
Well, we've had wars as far as we can tell.
Kali is a little over 5,000 years old now, and he lasts for another 427,000 years. So we have a long ways to go down. But within Kali Yuga, there's a sanchari, there's a wave of what is called the Golden Age, the Satya Yuga, which began a little over 500 years ago.
So within the 500,000 Kali Yuga, a Satya Yuga started.
A mini Satya Yuga of God consciousness begins, right? And it lasts for 10,000 years.
Life in the universe is so profound and deep and complex that to me as a human dropped on this earth, looking at the world, looking at my life, looking around me, and then hearing these things, to me it just sounds like a very fancy, beautiful way of trying to explain something, but it's an abstraction. Like you take an orchestral work and you try to reduce it to a guitar.
Right.
You have 4 fingers that you can play with on the right hand of the guitar. You can play 4 instruments at the same time. Orchestral may have 100 instruments. Right. So you got to mimic the drum, mimic everything, you know. So to me it sounds like this. But if we put this on hold for the moment and look at the things that are vital to our daily existence. Right. Like I think this question that you raised about, or the subject of whether the Jiva is eternal or not, I think this is a very vital question which is mankind has asked for eternity. Right. The Egyptians, they wanted to, before they die, they would take their ship and bury it next to their grave, because they believed that when they come back, then they can ride the same ship and go back to Aswan. So the question of eternity, the ancient Hindus apparently wanted to invent yoga in order to stay young so they can live longer and so on. And all kinds of beliefs are there in both East and West about how the self continues. Right. So aside, ultimately we really don't know what happens after death. We have all kinds of theories, but I don't know anybody who's died and gone there and come back and has a credible story. But what we can do is to look at what is now. So what we have now that we know for sure is that there is a body. There are 2 bodies sitting on these chairs. Right. So this is an aspect of this jiva or individual that you refer to. And what we know for sure is that both of these bodies are going to die. I hope we
Right.
both live another 100 years, but eventually both the bodies will die.
Yes.
So aside from the body, we can theorize about things that are not body, about energy and so on and so
Right.
on and so forth. But what does make sense is that this desire of humanity to continue.
Right. Why is that? Why do you think there is a desire? Two things. One is a desire not to die, and a desire to continue. Why do you think that is there so innately bound in the heart of the jiva?
For the body, it's natural that it has its own self-protecting mechanism, and therefore, if it's threatened, if its life is
Right.
threatened, it wants to fight it. It wants
But is
to
that all?
run.
Is it just
and
an
so,
instinct
no, that's
to
not all.
self-preservation, preserve the body from harm?
Well, the body itself has its innate protection against death.
Right.
So the body doesn't want to die because it wants to stay alive. Why is that so? I don't have a ready answer.
Okay.
It's just in the biological condition. Now, aside from that, then what else is there? The psychological entity that we call me, which is this part of Jiva, that by itself, I think what happens is the body's desire to continue kind of reflects on that, and that also wants to continue because its existence depends on continuity.
So you're saying that the me is a creation of the body?
I think some of the physical conditionings are translated into psychological conditionings.
Okay, that you can't establish that. This is the theory.
Well, it's an observation.
Observation,
Yeah.
but you're theorizing based on what you have observed.
Yeah, things like, for example, trying to protect. Okay,
Yeah.
If you try to attack me, I have to protect myself physically.
Right.
But if you try to attack me psychologically, do I have to protect myself psychologically?
You can try.
But the core question is,
Yeah.
what is the me psychologically?
I think
That's
before
the
we
gist
get
of
to
it.
that, right? Before we even get to that, Reza. Reza. That's what I thought it was. But I heard other people here saying other things. I thought maybe he has a different take on the name.
I'm
Reza.
sure you know other Rezas.
No, I know
LA,
other
right?
Rezas.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. But I just wanted to conclude my previous thought.
Okay.
That of the five aspects of the absolute truth, the last one is karma. Karma means work.
Mm-hmm.
So Jiva is working. You're working. I'm working. I don't mean just a job, but I mean we're doing activity.
Actions.
Activity of thought, like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Actions. And that is not eternal. That is temporary. Okay? So we can come back to
Okay.
this. But I think, based on what you were saying just now, the discussion you were introducing, to me the most salient question that would probably help us to understand this topic better is to ask, what is death? Can we understand death without putting it in context? Is it just what is it? Is it an abstraction? What dies? Who dies? What is death? This is the question that I think is worth pondering. Because we know everyone has to die, but no one stops to go, what is death? What the heck is death? They know how they will respond to being threatened with death or the process of death, seeing others die, but what is
Are
it?
you talking about death in general or death of the body?
I'm talking about death. Whether you want to categorize it as death of the body, death of, quote, the soul, death of this, what is it?
So death is ending.
But ending presupposes a beginning, right? Death means the end of something. Without a beginning, there is no end.
Yeah,
So in other words, you are locked into now a world of duality, of birth and death, beginning and end, appearance, disappearance. So this is why I'm saying it's important. For us, right, we have thought about these topics, so it's not really that important.
No, I'm looking
Perhaps,
at I'm
right?
looking at it again fresh. I
Right.
want to leave.
That's what I
want to
want.
leave behind everything
Any
I know.
preconceived notion.
I'm looking at it right now.
Right, so let's
you're
do
saying
that.
you're saying death implies a beginning.
I'm saying we need to understand what death is. So, challenge me. What or who dies? What is it that dies? Who is it that dies?
You're talking about
what
when
does-
like somebody dies. You mean?
What is it that dies?
Well, there's two aspects of it.
Yes.
There is the physical death, okay?
Which means?
But I think, physical death is fairly easy to explain medically. Heart doesn't beat anymore and so on.
Right.
Okay. But I think what's even more, because that we know, we have very good information, scientific
Right.
information.
But when you
what that
say
means.
physical death, you're implying that there's some other kind of death.
Yes.
Once you qualify it,
yes,
then
I
there's
do.
a spiritual death, there's a psychic death, there's a this death.
I do.
What are we talking about?
Yes, let me try to explain. So, physical death is clear. Now, psychologically, I think we can experience, or one can experience death while the body is still alive. So we don't need to physically die in order to understand psychological death. Okay? Now, I think I come back to the question of what is the self psychologically? What is the me? Because
are we done with the death topic?
No, but this is related.
Okay, it's related.
Because if we're saying what is death other than the physical death, then we need to ask what is it that dies?
What? Yes, that's what I'm asking.
And that thing which
or better yet, who is it that dies?
Who is it that dies? Yes. So can we agree that that would be the me?
The me that dies? We have to describe, right, and define what is me.
Exactly.
What is the me subject to death?
Can we stay on this?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question. Let's get the question really clear.
Okay.
So what is the me?
What is the me?
When I look at my life, my mind, my laboratory,
right,
what I see is that anytime there is a sense of me, my problem, my desires, my, I, me, mine. You know another George Harrison song? I, me, mine.
I don't know that
from
song.
the Let It Be album.
Okay.
I think it's around this idea. All through the day, I, me, mine, I, me, mine.
Bhagavad Gita says, mameti. Mameti means me and mine. Ahang mameti. Ahang means I, and mameti means what is
Probably
mine.
George got the idea from there.
Yeah, no, ahang mameti. He was very close to our founder.
I know.
Prabhupada, so.
I know. So anytime there's this sense of me, if I look at it, what I see is that it's related to memories.
Memories.
It's related to memories, and memories are related to experience.
Okay.
Past experience. And all of that is formed through a process which is thinking.
Or experiencing.
No, wait. Yeah, that experiencing creates thinking in a way that, using memory.
They work together.
So this computer is built. The building blocks of this is metal, wires, chips, and so on.
Right.
So the building blocks of the me, it appears to be thinking. The blocks that make the me. So when thinking is quiet, when it's not there, then the me is not there. Not at a superficial level, but at a very deep level. If I'm sitting here or I'm walking down the street, and we have a linguistic issue here when I say I, so don't get stuck on the language. But when I'm walking down the street or sitting here, if I'm very quiet inwardly,
right. Where is the me then?
Yeah, there is no me.
There is no me.
There is just looking at those trees. There is just hearing the birds. There is perception. The senses are alive, but there is no me.
Would you say that what you're talking about is simply a different level of mind? The mind is operating on different levels. And
state of mind, you mean?
Different states of mind, let's say, okay? Because they speak of alpha, theta, beta. They speak of these different levels of mind. So when you are still, it's not that what you're defining as the me to equate with the jiva, or the person in this body, if you accept that, it's not that he's absent, he's just still maybe operating on a different level where he's not active. Like when you dream, you are not active. But still the body is alive. The body is functional. Okay? If you hear a noise in your sleep, somehow that superior part of you wakes up and goes, oh, I need to get out of here because the house is on fire. So there's still the me present, but he's dormant.
If I translate this into my world,
yes,
what you just said, what brings to mind is that there is conditioning. Okay, conditioning is habits, is the things that are programmed into your memory based on your experience, whether it's your own experience, whether it's this life experience, or it's experience of the entire human consciousness, which is handed to you through the conditioning of the brain, because your brain is the result of entire human history. So those things are the conditionings, are the habits, and they're there in the brain cells, in the memory cells. Now, when they become active, they can make the me.
Oh, so you see the me as being a fluid sort of entity that arises, but how does the me compare to the jiva?
But let
What
me
is this,
finish.
is there a distinction between them?
But let me finish, because I'm not giving you a pre-composed idea. I'm just exploring.
Okay, you're just exploring.
So the me, when it's created,
Yes.
when I'm walking down the street and I remember if my boss treated me badly and oh, he violated this or whatever, and then so the me is active, or does she, whatever.
Right.
Some activity of the me, and the pity and all of this activity realm of the self. This is based on, this is thinking which is rooted using the data in the memory cells, which is dormant, I mean, which is there, stored. So what I'm trying to say is that when I'm talking about death of the me, I'm not talking about going and erasing all of those memory cells, because they can be there, but the point is for them not to intervene, not to make your life miserable, not to get into where they don't belong, because it's part of our existence that we have memory cells, and maybe they are actually something which you write and then they're there. But they don't have to stop bothering you. I can start thinking about things that bothered me 20 years ago and start getting worked out about it. But I don't need to, because it's rested, it's dealt with, it's in like long-term storage, and it's not part of the active consciousness. But it's not suppressed either. Because if 20 years ago I suppressed something, if I didn't deal with it, that means like throwing a bunch of data and just throwing into some chips. And then what happens, because there is disorder, then they come back. But if it's, for example, you know, but the artistic approach and the intelligent approach is to bring order to disorder, and just then it can rest.
Okay.
So this thing with the ending of me, I think, is very important. I think several scriptures refer to it in various religions, whether Islam, Christianity, they all refer to this dying moment to moment. If not the scripture themselves, but other people who wrote around these religions, they all talked about this importance of death while you're alive.
But what I am trying to get at is the concept of the Jiva. See, because that still is the most important concept for us beginning here to understand. Perhaps before we can even understand God, we have to understand ourselves. And if we are defined as Jiva, what is that definition? What is the Jiva? What is his composition? What is his nature? And when you get that, of course, you may reject it coming from like the Bhagavad Gita, and you may opt for a more like fluid sort of definition. Well, it's to me, it's whatever. This might evolve. So next year when I talk to you, you have another concept that you have overlaid on what you've just explained to me, because like you say, you're just exploring.
Sure.
Right? But I can just tell you that based on the discipline that I follow, which might not appeal to you because it's more, maybe you might say formulaic, but remember it's coming from a system called the Vedas. Veda means knowledge. Or better yet, that which is known. What is known? And who knows it? Well, it is not that human beings suddenly speculated and came up with this information. This information was revealed.
But can we find those out as a fresh, new human, with intelligence, with senses that are not distorted through drugs or something?
No, you cannot. There's a process. The process is a descending order of knowledge. In other words, when you enroll in UCI, you come in fresh slate. You don't get up to the head of the class and go, okay, I'm here, I'm brand new freshman, I know everything, I'll teach you. No, you humble yourself, you find a desk, sit down, you buy the required textbooks, you get your notepad and your pen, and you wait to be instructed. And then you're graded on what you know. Yes. You don't become a computer tech or a software writer, designer, or project manager on your first day of university.
Correct.
What you do is you go through a process.
Right.
Well, hear me first.
Okay.
You go through a process, and then when you have learned the process, the basics, now you can take that and tweak it and add to it and create more, distort it here, do amazing and wonderful things with it. But you first of all have to understand the basics of software programming. Mm-hmm. Everybody who becomes a software engineer has done that. Whether it's Steve Jobs, he learned it at what was available at the time, then he created it, tweaked it, built his own thing. We all start out that way. So it's important to understand what the process is for the transmission of knowledge.
But spirituality is different. For practical,
how is it different?
For practical reasons.
Here's a guy, he's a caveman, literally. He's dwelling in a cave, all he knows, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Right? That's all he's preoccupied with, just animal instincts.
Are you sure?
Okay?
Don't you think he sits under a tree sometimes?
Wait, I'm telling you, I'm giving you the example of a person who's only preoccupied with these 4 basic needs.
Okay.
There is no time, because all of his time is taken up in hunting his next meal.
Okay.
Okay? All of his time is taken up with, okay, there's a female, let me go do what we do. You understand?
Right.
Oh, we're being attacked by the next tribe, let me fight.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are in that situation, there's very little contemplative time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But we can progress to the guy who is more peaceful and has time for that kind of contemplation. But it's not to say that that person is not capable of contemplation of who he is and what he is, right? But at this moment, it's not taking place. How many human beings are actually in that process? We don't know, but there are a few people, and it says in the scriptures here that Atata Brahma Jigyasa, that's when someone becomes certified as a human, when he says, "Who am I?" Now is the time to contemplate the absolute truth. And then he sees the absolute truth. Oh, it can be understood in 5 features. But you don't know this. You have to enroll in a process where someone who knows to this degree can teach you. And then when you graduate, you go to the next level. So spiritual life is a process of transmission of knowledge like everything else. The mistake I think we make in the West especially is that we think, oh, anyone can jump up and say, but then wait a minute. We don't know, because it's all speculation.
Excuse me, but I totally disagree here. Let me explain, if I may. And this is, as you said, this is probably a big misunderstanding, but it's a different kind of misunderstanding. This is one of those examples of the body's conditioning echoing into the mind. Let me explain. There's a role for progress. Anyway, so I totally respect science and knowledge and the scientific process, inquiry.
Right.
But I think we need to distinguish between physical, practical, mechanical things versus psychological, spiritual things. Because in the physical world, we absolutely need to do what you said. You cannot go with freshman in college and expect to get a PhD day 2. So you got to go through, you got to build on the knowledge which is already known.
Right.
Now, psychologically or spiritually, I'm wondering if this man who is thrown into earth, if he really needs to be, if knowledge is really helpful for him. This is a bit of a sensitive area, because the whole world believes that it does, like you said.
It needs knowledge.
Yeah, and that spiritual progress, that is in steps. And there's so many things in this town, if you go, they talk about, we will help you grow spiritually or psychologically to get better. But I'm questioning that.
Okay.
Because if
you're free to question that.
Yeah, because what you are now is what you are.
Right.
And the only way you can get better or progress or something is through understanding what you are, and then some change can come about this. So if you're a violent person, you can go to all the gurus in the world, you can go to all the swamis and do all the meditation you want, but you're still violent until you get to see your violence, and then you really understand what you are. But that seeing is an art itself. Because if you see what you are and you immediately judge it, and you say, I shouldn't be violent, then you're moving away from it. And then in moving away, we get into this duality in our consciousness of what is versus what should be. The person is sitting on the couch, eating an ice cream, being fat, thinking, I should go running. What happens in that state of mind is that he loses energy, because now he's fighting with himself. Oh, I should be something else than what I am. And in fact, what's needed to get off the couch and go running is energy, right? The reason he's not doing it is because he doesn't have energy, because he just wasted it in that conflict.
Right.
So understanding what you are is really important. And any change that comes out of that, it comes naturally. It's not a deliberate process of wanting to evolve or become something else psychologically. Being is the important thing, not becoming. Becoming is a trap, because becoming implies psychological time, which means I will change in the future. See, that's another one of those traps where we translate the body and the physical world into the psyche.
Right.
Because in the physical world, we see time.
Right.
You see, we have night and day and seasons and so on. And then we think that psychologically it's the same thing. That if we wait, we can plant a seed and see it grow. And we think psychologically we will change if we just wait. But that's not the case. Most of the smokers think one day they will quit.
Right.
But that one day doesn't come.
But what I'd like to do is to move this discussion away from even psychology, because that's material. This is also matter. We're talking about matter. The mind is material. The body is material. And these are accoutrements of the mind, of the body, the mind, the intelligence. And what you were talking about earlier with the me, this is simply a sense of what is called a false ego. The false ego is one of the elements of the material world that you're apportioned when you come into the material world. You have to have a sense of identification. If you don't have it, you go nuts. So you are a man, and you think that you're a Persian man living in Switzerland.
I don't. That's the whole point.
Oh, wait.
No, but this is important.
But I'm not talking about you directly. I'm just using you as an example.
No, but also
right?
generally.
But so we want to remove it from like I am this and I'm that. But in general, perhaps you have evolved beyond that. But most people, if you see a woman, she's thinking she's a woman. You see, how does a dog know he's a dog?
Why does a dog need to know he's
No, I'm not asking. No, that's not what I'm asking. How? I'm asking the mechanics.
Okay.
You're a scientist. Answer.
Should I answer?
How does a dog know? Wait. What I mean by that is, what is the evidence from the casual observer watching a dog? How do we know that dog is completely understanding that he is a dog?
Does he have an image of himself as a dog? That's what you're asking.
You may put it that
or
way.
does
But
he have an idea?
How do we know that dog understands that he's a dog?
Okay, can I answer?
It's a very simple answer, by the way.
Well, but the thing is that it's not so simple because I don't know what goes on in a dog's mind.
You don't have to know.
But what I do know...
You don't have to know. You don't have to be a scientist to know this answer.
But what I do see is what goes on in my mind and my friends' minds and the people that I know and watching the news in the minds of the public or whoever, politicians and so on. So when we look at that, we see that one of the dominant processes...
Wait, you haven't answered my question.
No, I'm coming there. Just 1 minute. One of the dominant processes in the minds of most people is image making. So just what you explained earlier, to go around saying I am a woman, to say I am a man who lives somewhere, I am this and that and that and that. So all of these things are images that we make. So my question is, can we move in life without any image?
Well,
not just one more sentence.
Wait, but this is the requirement of spiritual life, is to move away from these temporary material designations. This image making, it does not serve us.
So we agree on that.
We agree.
Good.
But this tracks all the way back. And by the way, the answer to the question is he barks. What am I made? What is my constitutional makeup? The answer comes out of this Vedic system. It tells you you're made of 3 things, right? And you go, well, does that make sense? I am made of knowledge. I am made of bliss, and I am made of eternity. These are hard concepts for us in the West to understand because we have not been raised with them. And we don't even know that they exist. We don't know that Jiva exists. We think we are the body.
Can I respond?
Yes.
So the notion that we need, that identity is an essential part of our existence.
It is there. We can't change it. It is there.
Well,
I mean, we can change it, but it's there from the moment we appear in the material world. That's the point that is...
Okay, if we break this down and look at what's inside identity, I see 2 things. One is the aspect which is practical, physical, which means I live in a certain house and it's at a certain address, so I need to remember this. And it's not so much an identity, even that. It's just the practicality, okay? But where identity comes into being is to think this is my house and I feel proud of it and I identify with it.
That's just another aspect, right?
Let me finish.
Right.
I am a man who lives in Brentwood, for example.
Right.
So I become proud of this,
right,
and so on. I'm identifying myself, or I am a doctor's wife,
right,
or I am this, or I am that.
I'm a musician, or I'm a scientist, and I know so much about philosophy. All these things come out of that sense of identification. See how automatic these things are? It's not that you have to tap into it or tune into it. It happens spontaneously. It's automatically doing its thing.
Okay, no, but just a moment. The image making that we were talking about.
Right.
So the question is, can we live without images of not just ourselves, and not that the images don't serve no purpose, they're actually detrimental to peaceful living. Because, let me explain.
Materially, yes.
Because if I make an image of you,
Yes.
then I don't see you as you are now. I see that image.
Right.
But my responsibility in relationship to you and in every relationship is to see you as you are now, and not according to some
But you can't see
image.
me. You only see my body.
Well, okay, now to see a tree, let me keep it simpler. Okay, to see whatever it is that I'm relating to. So my responsibility is not to make an image of you, and can I live without making an image of myself, without making an image of you, without making an image of your image of me, without making making an image of yourself,
Right.
and so on. So if I say that I've studied philosophy, you can make an image of me, you can make an image of myself as he's saying he knows. For example, I'm not saying you did that, right?
No, but we can do that.
We can do that, exactly.
Because if someone presents himself that way, okay, you want me to accept you as that, so I'm going to accept you as that.
Yeah. No, earlier you asked me about, we were talking about Bhagavad Gita and so on, and I think you asked me about my background. I said, I know I've studied the Eastern and the Western philosophies,
Okay.
and most of the books, so I'm familiar with them. It wasn't a statement of pride, and it wasn't a statement of authority to say that my knowledge is so little.
Right. That's all we can.
So, but nevertheless, anyway,
hope
this
to understand about these things.
the important thing is to understand the role of images and how they destroy life. Basically, they destroy relationships, and of course, practical images are important.
Right.
So again, they have the right place, and the mind cannot think efficiently without making images.
Right.
So if I have to work it out every time, it would be a lot of extra work
Going
to
to the
figure
same
out where
territory every time.
Yeah, exactly. To figure out where my house is or what kind of bread I want to buy. So I make an image of this is the kind of bread I like. It's as a memory, effectively. That's what an image is. But in daily life, can I move around without an image, without any identity either? I don't need to walk around and say, I am a man of God, or I am whatever. Even as an evolved
Once you start
form.
saying, I am this, I am that, you are in the world of designations.
Exactly.
You're in the world of material designations.
Exactly.
However, we are not seeking to annihilate the self. We're not seeking to annihilate our image. What we're seeking to do is to change the image to the place where it becomes the real image. In other words, the Jiva does have its innate identity.
On that subject of the Dharma
Yes.
and identification, just to put it very simply, if you say that there is a certain Dharma for this individual and it has these qualities and so on and so forth, I have no disputes with this, but I wonder if the identification is necessary, and I don't see it. I really don't see a role for identification to say I am this and I am that.
Materially,
but
we
hang
agree.
on. But we do that, and why do we identify ourselves with various things that sustain the self?
Mm-hmm.
That's one way for the self to find continuity,
Right.
to avoid death psychologically.
Well,
So-
yeah, you might break it down into that if psychology is your thing, but if you want to simply say that it's important for functioning in the material world, and there are prescriptions, there are certain prescribed identities, you might say, regardless of your designation.
But how has knowledge helped us be better humans? Because and that's the thing. A smoker knows that smoking is bad for him.
Does
he
he
knows.
really?
Yeah, he really knows. Most smokers, I talk to a lot of smokers, especially young ones. Most of them know it's bad for them. They have all the knowledge. They know what's in it that's bad, everything. But they don't change.
Do you know why they can't quit though?
No, I know why they can't.
They
Tell me. That's
yes,
beside
we know
the
the story, but see, the same thing happens with eating meat. There are elements in the meat that actually addict you to
sugar is addictive.
sugar, so many things, right?
Right. But
So
the
we
point
don't
is-
fault someone who is addicted to cigarettes. We want to help them. We want to say this is an act of self-hate, right? And to help that person move from where he's doing self-abusive things to where now he's doing things that actually can move him along the path of giving up things that are self-abusive, whatever that might be.
Okay, But my point is that the knowledge itself doesn't change a person.
No, they have to act.
What does
They have
change?
to act.
Yeah, and what's the prerequisite for that action is seeing.
But without the knowledge, see, so therefore it says that you see by hearing. You receive the knowledge that in class, learning about computer programming, right? You receive the knowledge, it goes through the ears, and you receive it that way. You hold it, and it comes out of you in a certain way.
Yeah, but very practically speaking, in this particular example, the difference is between a smoker knowing that it's bad for him, knowing that it stains her teeth or makes them stink and so on, and wastes their money and so on. So that's the knowledge part. Then the insight part, the seeing part is to see dependence, to see how they depend on this cigarette psychologically and physically, how their nervous system is dependent on it, how it's related to other drugs
like knowledge.
Well,
that's all the different departments of knowledge here.
The physical aspect,
you can't get away from the knowledge. Remember, the living entity is part knowledge.
Well,
he is going to need knowledge at every step of the way.
There is a role for knowledge, no doubt. And in fact, to understand physical dependence, you need knowledge.
So much knowledge.
But you can also see that if you drink beer, for example, you will crave cigarette. And if you drink coffee, you crave cigarette. Because nicotine acts both as a stimulant and depressant against those two things. Yeah. So it's a double-edged blade.
It's a mess.
Right. But what happens then if they see psychological dependence? Then, my mother said something bad, I feel upset, I want to go smoke a cigarette. So most people actually go smoke cigarette without really seeing what just happened. But if you start paying attention to that,
that's a different level of seeing.
Right.
You're seeing more on the inside, more internal seeing, which is.
And then you see what you are, you see what's happening, and then it's almost a natural law. It's amazing. I mean, even in physics and in sciences, they've come to this that if you see something without trying to change it, then it can actually change by itself, just through that act of observation. But that's an art by itself, because if you observe it and you say, I shouldn't be that way, you're not seeing anymore. You're moving away from it into what should be.
Well, I know, I have personal experience of that just by having a realization about something that happened to you way back in your past, that you're still operating on that, that platform. Just by realizing it, it changes you.
Right. I'm not sure about being ready and so on, and I don't preach to these people. I just ask them questions.
It was a form of preaching, like Socrates. He didn't preach, but he asked questions, he posed questions. But that was a way of, we have different kinds of personalities. We have the one who's ask-assertive and one who's tell-assertive. The tell-assertive goes, you do this, you do that. He's the boss. But the same effect is achieved by the ask-assertive, where he says, do you think it's healthy to smoke?
Or do you like smoking?
Do you like smoking? But it's the same kind, it's the same thing. It's a duality here.
And often if they say yes,
yeah.
And then I say, how many do you smoke? 20, a pack. Do you like all of the 20 cigarettes?
But see, what you're doing is you're asking yes or no questions. They can just, I give you a nonsense answer.
Because it's like
what you want to do, or what you want to do is to say something like, if you really got them into a conversation and they
but this is to get them into a conversation.
Okay, but
do you like every cigarette you smoke? And if they're intelligent, they will look and say, maybe not every cigarette. If they say yes, I said, do you like every puff of every cigarette? And if they say yes, I give up. I go away.
Yeah.
But most of them who are intelligent, they say, maybe I don't like every puff of every cigarette. Yeah. And then another rationalization is, well, of course I like it because I smoke.
Of course, yeah. So they can give you any dumb answer they want,
But several people have changed. I actually made some videos and wrote some stuff about this, and the whole premise of it is not control, is not fighting it, because when you fight it, then it gets stronger, because you get weaker, because you lose energy in the fight.
Right.
And just to understand that it's just a magical thing.
All aspects nice psychological principles that are available to someone who is on that level and can incorporate them in his daily life and help other people. No, but Reza, I'll tell you, how you come to realize this is Krishna explains it. It's by following a process. You cannot, he says, understand me unless you do this. You cannot understand that this is true unless you perform bhakti. If you perform bhakti, Krishna says, you will understand me.
What's bhakti?
Bhakti.
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 Devotion.
Says, bhakti amam abhijanati. Without performing devotional service to me, you cannot understand me. So you could speculate all around it. You can, but unless you, and he explains what that bhakti is. He says, manmana, offer your obeisance unto me. Always think about me. Like this. When you begin doing these things, you begin to perceive the truth of it. So it's not just that they put the process here. They say, here's the lab work that helps you to see how the frog is doing what it's doing. I'm sorry. Yeah, right.
No problem. Shakes every time.
Yeah.
Well, to me, this is a belief system. To me, I respect you if you believe this, and if it works for you, I totally respect it. So I'm not trying to change it. But what I do see is that what we do know is that the self likes to continue. So it's not surprising that it would build a theory like this that says the Jiva is actually continuing, and it becomes Joe, becomes Tom, becomes Mary, and the dog becomes whatever, that whole system. I don't dispute reincarnation, by the way.
Right.
But I just don't know.
Okay, so you're agnostic.
I'm just a human.
No, but if you say, I just don't know, and by saying I don't know, what you're really saying is I don't care to know, that's different. Or I have decided that
in a way it's true.
This is unknowable.
In a way it's true. Because
but what I did was, Reza, I said, I don't know jack about this subject matter.
Right.
But I want to know. And I said, this is already existing.
Why does it matter?
Huh?
Why does it matter if there is reincarnation or not, if you live this life good? Because if you believe in it, then you need to live correctly.
Because you are dictating what your next environment is going to be by your thoughts, words, and actions in this life.
Exactly.
So then it becomes important.
That's the case in
if
this
you
life.
don't know, look at how many people are doing something that you can see. Well, if reincarnation is a fact, we'll put them in a very disadvantageous position in the next life.
But look, we don't even need to go to next life. What you do today
is affecting tomorrow.
It's going to affect you next week.
Right. So therefore, the Gita explains this. The living entity is traversing through different stages of life. Death is not the end. Death is just it's just an advertisement that this body is no longer able to continue. You see, because this body is finite. So you're progressing, you're performing up to the time of death certain actions, and then all of a sudden you have no body to enjoy or suffer the results. No, you get another body, and then you continue, and then when this body, it's like a car. You buy a yantra, and the body is called a yantra in Sanskrit. You buy a yantra in a Volvo. Nice. I have my landlord just bought himself a brand new Ferrari. Really fancy car, right? He's an attorney.
What color?
It's silver. Late model, right? Amazing, right? So, when it wears out, gets smashed or whatever, what happens? He gets another one. That's how these bodies are. They wear out, but we don't wear out. The soul, the Jiva, what we call the soul, and that probably is an unfortunate term, but the Jiva does not wear out. The atman does not wear out. He is the source of that energy that animates the body.
I mean, we can talk about this, but and I've seen certain things myself through these eyes and through other eyes that, but it's all metaphysical. I mean,
what does that mean?
I mean, what I mean
what
is
that metaphysical?
What I mean is that it's not something. We can talk about this, but this goes into a realm of speculation, of really, and to be honest with you, not that I don't care. I mean, I see certain things, and I see them, but there's not much I can do about it. But to build a theory around it and try to bring it down to a level of summarizing how it works based on these visions and so on, I don't want to do that. Because it seems to be too mysterious.
Yes, but whether you do or not do, whether you accept or not accept, does not affect what the truth is. Now, I'm not saying that this is the truth, right?
Right.
But what I'm saying is our approach to it does not dictate what the truth is. So if we say, I would rather just find my own way, it doesn't mean that by finding your own way you find the truth. Or whether you say, I believe this or don't believe this, it doesn't mean that what you don't believe is not true and what you believe is true. You still have the responsibility of establishing that, yes, what I do not believe is false, and what I do believe is true.
Or that I don't know.
Or that you don't care.
Or you don't know.
But if you don't know, and you're willing to admit that you're agnostic, you don't stay there. You see? You say, I don't know, but wait, I'm looking for someone who can teach me.
But look,
or I don't know, can you tell me?
But look, my
friend, find out.
Look at the size of our heads.
Yes.
Compare this to anything. Look outside. Compare it to the tree.
Right.
Compare it to not even going beyond the earth,
Right.
but we are tiny, 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 tiny.
So
How much do you think we can know with this tiny, tiny head?
we can understand enough to help us understand our relationship as a jiva to the Supreme Self God. This is what the 6 systems of philosophy that were propounded so many thousands of years ago were intended to do, to help people come to this knowledge so they would escape from the samsara, the world of birth and death. Because it was recognized that death is foreign. Death is not what we seek and what we want. But it's not just death, it's birth also. It's old age, it's disease.
You know, this is, to me, this sounds like again, as I said, it's an oversimplification. Because obviously there is something. There is obviously a process. There's obviously, something is happening. But I have not been able to figure it out.
That does not mean that the process is not simple, nor does it mean that because you have not figured it out, it is unfigure-outable.
Yeah, absolutely.
You agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, so our responsibility is to approach with humility this body of knowledge with respect and humility. And this is what Krishna dictates. He says, you approach this way. He says, in fact, to understand this knowledge, you must approach someone who knows. That's why I gave you the college example. Because if you want a degree in software design, you must approach the best software designer you can find. And he gives. This was the old system too. You became a. What was there was a term they used. If you were a shoemaker, and you wanted to be, and you took students.
Apprentice.
An apprentice, right. You became an apprentice to a shoemaker, and then one day you would be your own shoemaker. That's the way of knowledge transmission.
Okay, but just a second. So I find myself incapable of figuring out the secret of life and death. Okay,
That's
let me
a
finish.
good admission.
Let me finish.
That's a good admission. We
a
all
fact.
are there. That's our position.
But
we're born with no knowledge.
But I don't need any superior knowledge in order to sense that there is a different movement than the movement which most people live in, which is a movement of time and thought, which is the most dominant process in the minds of most people.
Right.
Thinking in terms of time and all of applying thought to areas that it doesn't belong, therefore creating all kinds of problems, confusions, suicide you mentioned.
Right.
In some of the richest countries in the world is the biggest problem.
rate is the highest.
So
if you go to Africa, you see that they're being killed there at such an amazing rate that, like with malaria, for example, one of the biggest killers
right.
of people in third world countries. So the whole thing is how to survive, they don't have the problems that we have here.
Right. So a lot of this confusion, which is so abundant in the world, is because the minds of people are injured because they're thinking about things that they're not supposed to be thinking about. So thinking is too dominant, and I'm not against thinking. There is a right place for thinking, and if we think too little about areas where we need to think about, we also get into trouble. Right. So it's just a matter of finding the right place. Now, beyond all this movement of thought time, there is another movement that I as a human sense.
Right.
And I think, looking at history, I think throughout eternity, mankind has sensed this other movement. Rumi said, come out of the field of time and enter into the field of love.
Okay.
And I sense that this other movement is also has qualities which I might call love.
Right.
The quality of being unlimited, and so on. And I can see that if I am so much into the field of time and thought, then I'm pushing out this other movement. So I cannot figure out the secrets of life and death, but I do sense that there is more to it, and then my mind learns that if it's quiet, it can tune into this other movement as well.
Right.
And I see that this me, with all of its struggles and so on, it just evaporates when it sees that it's not necessary. When it sees its own building blocks, the building blocks just fall off.
Right.
And then there is no me.
Right. You have annihilated the self.
Yeah, but not as a... The trick here is that people think freedom is a final event in time. That you become liberated and then that's it. But that's not the case. That's a conditioned way of looking at the subject.
Who believes that?
No, most people think this way.
Okay.
Most people think this guy is enlightened.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And people think that he's enlightened, then he's enlightened forever. And
what does that mean,
most of the gurus. But my point is that beside that, I think that the reason that people think an enlightened person is enlightened, finished, period, is because they're thinking within time. Because they think it's a final event in time, so it will continue as an enlightened person.
Well, you might be living in time because obviously we're bound by time here, but our thoughts do not always have to be bound by time. Because when you think on transcendental matters, that's beyond time and space. It is beyond time and space. When you think of spiritual things, it's where is the time? Where is space? It doesn't exist. It falls away because those things are material. They actually belong in the Prikiti, the vision of the 5 aspects of the absolute truth. They are matter. Matter has a beginning, middle, and an end. It has in the case of this here, it's not always manifested.
Okay, let's wrap this up.
Wait, I want to just show. I want to say this because I realize that we've probably gone to the.
No, I wanted to ask you about love.
I was going to talk about that.
Really?
That's where I'm headed, right? The original loving relationship is the relationship between Krishna and his eternal consort Radha. This is the original loving relationship. It's a relationship of conquest.
What about all the other gopis?
Wait.
Tell me about that. I'm really curious.
There are different categories of servants. Krishna it's like circles within circles within circles of friends.
Mm-hmm. It was just interesting for me because I never researched it.
But what it is, it's Krishna giving so much love, and the gopis reciprocating with everything they have, not because it's obligated, but because they have fallen in love. And that's why we chant Hare Krishna. That's what has happened to us. When we come in contact with Krishna, you fall in love. It doesn't matter if he's God. In fact, the gopis don't care that he's God. They don't even know that he's God. That godness evaporates, and Krishna does not want to be disturbed by being addressed as God. Because all of a sudden now he has to assume a different role. So he has to forget that he's God to have the relationships that he has in his intimate abode in Vrindavan.
Let's say you're walking down this path here,
Yes.
and this little 3-year-old who's a computer whiz,
Yes.
she runs to you and she smiles.
Right.
And there is love.
Right.
That thing is a pure thing.
Right.
I don't even need to think about Krishna or anything. Love is love.
You don't need to think about it, but if you know where it comes from, you see it reflected in each living entity. You see? In other words, if you don't know that anything of Krishna, whatever, but when you experience love or beauty, wow. You see, Krishna has 6 opulences. One of them is beauty. So when you look around here, see anything beautiful, the devotee is reminded of the beauty of Krishna. And he says that in the Gita, whatever you see that is beautiful, wonderful, spectacular, it emanates from but a spark of my splendor. So how do we understand that? But the devotee is thinking of Krishna all the time. So when he sees something beautiful or powerful or wealthy or renounced or knowledgeable, he goes, this is an emanation of Krishna's Shakti, emanation of Krishna's opulences. And so he's constantly engaged in the worship internally of his Lord. And that leads him to greater and greater degrees of love.
But this is so much words in all due respect, because love is wordless. Love is, I agree with you. I mean, I don't use the term Krishna, but love is the source of everything, it seems, and it envelopes everything.
Yes. So
we don't need to
with that.
We don't need to. I mean, you may want to call it Krishna, and of course,
no, I'm not calling love Krishna. I am not saying that Krishna, let's redefine the word love. Love is an action. Love is what we do. Love is how we manifest what we're feeling towards each other.
I think all those definitions are limited.
Perhaps in the material world.
Maybe we can't define love. Maybe we can define what it's not.
But we can get an understanding of it when we understand the relationship of love that exists between Krishna and his gopi girlfriends, and Krishna and his mother and father and his, the peers of his mother and father,
and Arjuna,
who is a friend. So friendship in love in friendship. You see, and there's love in servitude. They're all different levels of love. And that's
but I don't need to know all this in order to feel love.
No, you don't need to know this. You don't. There's no need to. In Vrindavan, they're not thinking, "Oh, I'm in this level." They're not thinking like
How
that.
can I relate this to the love of this 3-year-old who just runs or the love
And says
that feels-
hi? That civilization was all across the planet, not just.
But what's
in
really
India.
fascinating when you study world religions, you see that how extremely similar they are. But let's leave that for next time. Okay.
We'll leave that for next
Good
time.
talking with you.
It's
Thank
been
you
a
very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.